What's up, Lore Masters? Today's video is brought to you by Hover.com. Hover.com is so awesome they decided to specifically fund this series so you can get the very best videos I can make and I don't have to worry about the YouTube overlords coming after me. Hover.com is a domain site that specifically focuses on making sure that you can get what you need, namely the domain you want and one that works. Unlike other companies that have flashy gimmicks that offer to help you build the website, but try to sell you something every time you call when you inevitably have problems with their hard-to-use software, Hover focuses on getting you the domain and staying out of your way. They also want you to be who you are, make the website you want, the way you want. They want you to be you and won't try to stop you from being creative. Click the link in the description below to get 10% off. Supporting my sponsors supports the channel. With that out of the way, let's just get into it. In the last episode, we discussed how the Federation and the Borg were basically foils of each other. Both factions wanted to be more than the sum of their parts to improve and help make the universe a better place. They just had drastically different ways of going about it. While the Borg were constantly in the midst of conflict, attempting to assimilate and change everyone they meet. Or at least their technology. We'll get into that in a minute. The Federation wanted to explore and analyze their own individuality. Unfortunately for the Federation, when Starfleet had finally pushed back all of its enemies, those within Starfleet and the UFP became apathetic. They began exploring further into the galaxy, but not preparing for what was out there, for what was to come. In short, Starfleet was woefully unprepared for what they would bump up against. The fact that the Federation had become unchallenged meant that they would become pompous and arrogant. Starfleet would continue to expand, but again, not prepare for what they were expanding into. They would move too far, too fast. However, in the TNG episode Q Who, all of that would change. Thanks to Q, the Enterprise D would be pushed well beyond the borders of the Federation, well past where Starfleet had already explored. This would ensure that the first, well, quote-unquote, first interaction between the Federation and the Borg would occur. The conflict between the Enterprise D and the Borg cube would be interesting, to say the least. The cube that the Enterprise would come across would not act entirely consistent with what we see in future iterations of the Borg. It's very important to note that we do have some indication that the Borg were already aware of both the Federation and the Romulans long before this encounter. As I had stated, Q had pushed the Enterprise D so far that it would take over 2 years for them to return back to Federation territory. Deciding to do some exploring first, because Picard opted to be an idiot instead of get his people home, the Enterprise comes across a planet that appeared to have some form of civilization. However, most of this civilization's structures had been consumed, in patterns consistent with what was happening along the Romulan neutral zone. It's possible that the Borg had begun scouting Federation space after receiving the signal they would have gotten in Star Trek Enterprise's regeneration. Given that there wasn't more of a push against either government at this time, it's likely that the Borg had not found neither the Federation nor the Romulans worthy of assimilation, or again, at least their technology worthy of assimilation, similar to how the Borg felt about the Kazon initially. However, after scouting the Federation, finding them lacking, all of a sudden a Starfleet vessel is 7,000 light years away from where it should be. This would be an amazing jump in propulsion technology. It was also something that the Borg weren't aware of the Federation having capabilities of when they were scouting the territory. So after detecting the Starfleet ship, a cube is assigned to investigate why it was so far away from Federation space. This would also explain why the Borg, which beam onto the Enterprise while its shields are up, by the by, seem to only focus on the engines of the Enterprise. They are attempting to figure out how the Galaxy-class starship would have gotten so far from home. After scanning the ship and its computer systems, the Borg still aren't able to determine how the vessel had got there. So the collective decides they will assimilate the ship in an attempt to try to better understand how this could have occurred. As stated, the differences in firepower are astronomical. While the initial attack by the Enterprise D is highly effective against the Borg, the ship would ultimately begin to repair itself. After this, we see no weapon utilized by the Enterprise D that is effective against the Borg cube. It's clear that Starfleet was absolutely no match for the Borg collective. And then, when the Borg were about to completely assimilate the ship, Q saves the Enterprise and it disappears. Again, not only does this vessel appear to have technology that the Borg can't detect, but seems to be far superior to that of what the Borg can do themselves. In short, the Borg had already known about Starfleet, and now we had a ship and technology that was completely counter to everything they knew. In my last episode, I asked if Starfleet had changed the Borg. I wonder if the answer to that question is yes. The Anti-Trekker, who has his own series on the Borg, it'll be in the description below, you should check it out, basically agrees with this assumption, that the Borg didn't really assimilate people until the interaction with the Enterprise D. This would make some amount of sense when you think about it. Even if we take regeneration into account, the Borg receive a message from an unknown ship, are given coordinates to an unknown world for some reason, and begin investigating that area of space. They start scooping up several different colonies from the Romulans and the Federation and don't find any technology really worthy of their time. And then the Enterprise D appears out of nowhere. Not only do they now see a propulsion system that they didn't know existed, but also somehow the Federation had kept it a secret from them. So the Borg get curious. Obviously, they aren't able to gain the knowledge they need from the tech itself, so they do something that they rarely did. They begin assimilating the people of the civilizations. They capture Picard and assimilate him, utilizing more antiquated techniques of the time, and discover that the Federation doesn't possess the propulsion systems they thought. This would mean that they either find out about the Q at this time or learn more about the species. However, even though they didn't find the propulsion systems they wanted, the mentality of the Borg was already forever changed. They now see the advantages to not only assimilating technology, but the people en masse. This is where we begin to see them use the more advanced nanoprobe technology, which I still hold may have been something they got from Federation citizens. As I stated before, the discussions have always centered around the Federation, how this changed them, and how Wolf 359 was a wake-up call. But I'm beginning to think that the interactions went both ways, that it changed the Borg forever as well. Next week, we'll be taking a look at how the Borg operate, both in Q-Who and then at the Battle of Wolf 359. Don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe, and as always, guys, all of our lives are just a story. Make yours a good one.